Have you ever stopped to think about how much insecurity consumes your energy daily? I'm not talking about that occasional doubt about which path to take. I'm referring to that constant mental noise, that inner voice that questions every decision, revives conversations that have already ended, and invents catastrophic scenarios that will probably never happen. It's overthinking transforming your mind into a battlefield where you never emerge victorious. And the most curious thing is that the more you try to control these thoughts, the more they seem to multiply, as if the very attempt to silence them feeds them. The inconvenient truth? While you're trapped in this cycle, life happens outside your head, and you watch from the sidelines, paralyzed by the excessive analysis of everything. But here's what nobody tells you. Insecurity isn't a personality flaw or a permanent sentence. It's merely a symptom of how you're using your attention. The Stoic philosophers, more than 2,000 years ago, had already deciphered this code. They understood that most of our suffering doesn't come from external circumstances, but from how we interpret and react to them. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire while practicing detachment from outcomes. Seneca faced political persecution by cultivating gratitude for the present moment. Epictetus, who was a slave before becoming a master, taught that true freedom lies in focusing only on what is within our control. And they all shared a powerful secret. Wisdom lies not in eliminating difficult thoughts, but in completely changing your relationship with them. In this content, you will discover 10 practical Stoic principles that transform insecurity into confidence and silence the excessive thoughts that steal your peace. These are not abstract concepts from ancient philosophy. They are concrete tools that you can apply today to regain control of your mind. You will learn to separate who you are from what you think, to redirect your attention to what really matters, and to build an inner foundation so solid that external storms will no longer be able to shake you. Get ready, because what comes next can completely change the way you see your challenges. The impermanence of difficult things is real, and understanding this is the first step to transforming daily effort into lasting results. Are you ready to take command of your own mind? 1. To separate oneself from one's own thoughts. The first major turning point in your journey toward inner security happens when you finally understand that you are not obligated to believe everything your mind produces. It seems obvious when stated like that, but how many times have you found yourself completely dominated by a catastrophic thought, as if it were an absolute truth? Overthinking feeds precisely on this confusion between observer and observed. When you completely identify with your thoughts, every negative idea becomes a direct threat to your identity. It's as if you were a driver who confused the car with himself. Any scratch on the paintwork becomes a personal wound. Stoic wisdom teaches us that there is a healthy distance between the one who thinks and what is thought, and cultivating this space is the first step to regaining control. Marcus Aurelius, at the height of Roman power, wrote in his Meditations that a man's life is what his thoughts make of it. But he wasn't saying we are slaves to our thoughts. He was showing that we have the power to choose which ones deserve our attention. Imagine your mind as a stage where various actors take to the stage to perform. Some are dramatic, others comedic. Many are simply repetitive and boring. Insecurity arises when you believe you need to give a standing ovation. Applause for all of them, that every thought deserves to be taken seriously and investigated exhaustively. But the truth is that you are the spectator, not the actor. You can simply observe the play without stepping onto the stage. When a thought of doubt arises, did I make the right decision? You can recognize it for what it is, just a thought, not an order or a prophecy. Practicing this distancing requires presence and conscious effort at the beginning. Start by naming your thoughts when they appear. I'm having a thought about failure. I'm having a thought about other people's judgment. It seems simple, even childish, but this small action creates a crucial space between you and the mental content. It's like putting quotation marks around a sentence. Automatically, you recognize that it's not you speaking directly. Over time, this practice becomes natural, and you realize that you can have anxious thoughts without necessarily becoming an anxious person. The gratitude for this discovery is immense, because for the first time you understand that you don't need to wage war against your own mind. You just need to stop voluntarily enlisting in its army. 2. Bring the mind back to the present. Insecurity loves the past and the future. These are its favorite territories to plant flags. In the past, it relives failures. analyzes every wrong word, recreates scenes with different outcomes. In the future, it paints catastrophes, imagines rejections, constructs scenarios where everything goes wrong. The present, ironically, is the only place where it cannot survive. Not because the now is always perfect or comfortable, but because, when you are genuinely present, there is no mental space for overthinking to flourish. Mindfulness of the present moment is like turning on the light in a room where imaginary monsters were hiding. Suddenly, you realize there was nothing there all along. Epictetus taught that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And this has never been truer than when your mind is wandering far from the here and now. But how exactly do you bring your mind back when it insists on wandering? The answer lies in sensory anchors, concrete elements of the present moment that serve as return points. It could be the sensation of your breath going in and out, the weight of your body in the chair, the sounds around you, the taste of the coffee you're drinking. Each time you realize you've gotten lost in thoughts about that meeting tomorrow or that conversation yesterday, gently redirect your attention to one of these anchors. It's not about suppressing thoughts that would only increase tension, but simply choosing where to direct your focus. It's an exercise in active detachment. You acknowledge that the thought exists, thank your mind for trying to protect you by creating these scenarios, and then return your attention to the only moment that truly exists. The impermanence of everything becomes more evident when you live in the present. That overwhelming feeling of anxiety, observe it with mindfulness and you will see that it changes, fluctuates, sometimes diminishes in intensity without you doing anything. That persistent thought, if you don't feed it with continuous attention, it passes like a cloud in the sky. Seneca wrote that the man who anticipates pain suffers twice, and he was absolutely right. When you anchor your presence in the now, you only suffer when something is actually happening. And surprisingly, that's far less frequent than your mind leads you to believe. Start with short intervals. 5 minutes of total presence while showering, 2 minutes focused solely on the meal. The gratitude that arises from these moments of mental clarity is the fuel to expand this practice. You realize that life was happening all along, but you were too busy rehearsing for an imaginary future. 3. Accept that everything is impermanent. There is a deep human resistance to accepting that nothing remains the same. Neither suffering, nor joy, nor circumstances that today seem unshakable. This resistance is, to a large extent, the source of our most persistent insecurity. When something bad happens, the mind immediately projects, "This will never pass. It will always be like this. This is how I am and always will be." This perpetuation of the difficult moment creates a psychological weight disproportionate to the problem itself. Marcus Aurelius constantly reflected on impermanence, not because he was pessimistic, but because he understood that this wisdom liberates. When you recognize that everything flows, that everything changes, that nothing is permanently fixed, paradoxically you can lean more confidently on the present moment. It's like learning to surf. Stability doesn't come from stopping the wave, but from flowing with it. Overthinking often stems from the impossible desire to freeze time or control the future. You overthink because you believe, even unconsciously, that thinking enough will guarantee a specific outcome or avoid some pain. But here's the liberating truth: you don't have that power, and that's okay. The effort isn't in controlling what is naturally uncontrollable. Changes, the reactions of others, external events, but in cultivating a mind that dances with change instead of fighting against it. Think of a tree during a storm. The rigid ones break, the flexible ones bend and survive. Accepting impermanence isn't resignation or passivity. It's applied emotional intelligence. It's recognizing that that difficult phase at work will pass, that feeling of inadequacy is temporary, that even your most ingrained fears will transform over time. Practicing detachment becomes more natural when you internalize this truth. It's not about not caring about anything, but about holding everything lightly, knowing that nothing can truly be possessed or fixed. When you experience success, appreciate it fully with gratitude, but know that it is a moment, not an eternal identity. When you face failure, genuinely feel it, but remember that it too will pass and transform into something else. The Stoics practiced negative visualization, imagining the loss of things they valued, not to be morbid, but to cultivate presence and appreciation for what exists now. When you understand that everything is borrowed by time, each moment gains a deeper meaning. The attention you dedicate to the present intensifies because you know that this exact moment will never return. And curiously, this awareness of transience doesn't bring sadness. It brings a certain peace, a wisdom that says, since everything passes, I can get through this too. For limit the scope of concern. One of the most liberating discoveries you can make is that worry, when unmanaged, behaves like a gas. It expands to occupy all available mental space. Let it run wild, and it will take over your entire day, infiltrating every moment of silence, every transition between activities, every minute before sleep. The Stoic action here is not to eliminate worry completely. That would be unrealistic and even counterproductive, but to confine it to a specific space where it can be processed productively. It's like having a meeting room for difficult issues instead of allowing them to invade every room in the house. Epictetus taught about the dichotomy of control. Separate what is in your hands from what is not. But before applying this wisdom, you need to create a dedicated moment for this separation to happen. The technique is surprisingly simple and absurdly effective. Choose a specific time of day, say 30 minutes between 7 p.m. and 7:30 p.m., and declare that period your worry time. For the rest of the day, when an anxious thought arises, and they will, you don't suppress or fight it. You simply acknowledge, thank you, mind. I'll write this down and think about it during my dedicated time. Write the worry down on paper or on your phone and continue with what you were doing. What happens is fascinating. Many of these worries lose their urgency when you finally reach your reserved time. Some even seem silly or have already been resolved naturally. And those that remain relevant receive your full, focused attention, allowing you to truly think about them instead of just anxiously ruminating on them. This effort of containment trains your mind to understand that not everything needs to be resolved immediately, that there is a right time for each type of mental action. The insecurity that comes from feeling that you need to be constantly vigilant, constantly processing potential threats, begins to diminish. Your mind learns that there is a safe space where worries will be dealt with, so it can relax a little during the rest of the day. It's like training a puppy, with consistency and gratitude for the process, not frustration when it fails. You teach new patterns of behavior. Marcus Aurelius wrote that confining one's thoughts to the present moment was an essential daily practice. Limiting the space of worry is exactly that. You don't deny the existence of difficult issues, but you refuse to let them hijack your entire presence and all your energy. Over time, you notice that you can be genuinely present during a meal, a conversation, a walk, because you know there is an appropriate time to process what needs to be processed. 5. Turning concerns into actionable actions. The paralysis of insecurity rarely stems from the problem itself. It comes from how we perceive the problem, as a giant, undefined monster that we don't know where to begin to confront. Overthinking thrives on this vagueness because it creates the perfect environment for endless rumination. You end up circling around the problem, analyzing it from every angle but never truly moving forward. The Stoics had a radically different approach, transforming every worry into a clear question: what is within my control in this situation? And then converting that answer into concrete action, however small. Seneca didn't philosophize abstractly about challenges. He wrote practical letters, full of actionable advice. This action-oriented approach isn't about denying the complexity of problems, but about refusing to drown in them. Take any worry that's occupying your mental space right now and practice this exercise. Write it at the top of a sheet of paper. Below, draw a vertical line dividing the page into 2 columns. In the left column, list everything related to that worry that is outside your control. Other people's reactions, the end result, external circumstances, the past. In the right column, list only what is within your control, your actions, your efforts, your responses, how you choose to interpret the situation. Now comes the crucial part. Take each item from the right column and transform it into a specific, achievable action. Instead of, I need to improve my presentation, write, I'm going to rehearse the opening 5 times today. Instead of, I have to sort out my financial situation, write, I'm going to list 3 expenses I can cut this week. See the difference? The first version keeps you in the land of worry. The second puts you in the territory of action. What happens when you do this consistently is a profound transformation in your relationship with challenges. Attention shifts from the size of the problem to the next concrete step you can take. Every small action completed, no matter how modest, sends a powerful message to your brain. You are capable, you are moving forward, you have agency over your life. This is the wisdom of valuing effort above the result. You stop measuring your worth by the final outcome, which is often beyond your control, and begin to find security in the process, in your daily effort, in your willingness to act despite uncertainty. Gratitude arises naturally when you realize that, even in difficult situations, there is always something you can do. Always. Even if it's just changing your perspective or seeking a conversation, or reading about the subject, or resting to regain energy. The impermanence of difficult phases becomes more tangible when you are actively participating in your own transformation, instead of just passively waiting for things to get better. 6. Replace scarcity with gratitude. Insecurity has a preferred breeding ground where it grows unchecked, a scarcity mindset. When your mental focus is constantly on what's missing, the money you don't have, the recognition you don't receive, the opportunities you've missed, the qualities you lack, you create an internal narrative of inadequacy that corrodes any foundation of confidence. It's like trying to build a house on quicksand. No matter how much effort you put in, everything seems unstable. Overthinking feeds on this narrative because there's always something more to worry about, always another gap to analyze, always another reason to doubt. The Stoics understood that true wealth lies not in having everything you desire, but in desiring only what you have. This isn't conformism or lack of ambition. It's the wisdom of building from a solid foundation instead of an imaginary void. The practice of gratitude isn't about denying real problems or pretending challenges don't exist. It's about rebalancing your attention so that you recognize, with the same intensity that you recognize what's missing, everything that is already present and working. Marcus Aurelius, commanding a vast empire and facing constant wars, still found time to list things he was grateful for. From people who influenced him to lessons he learned from adversity. Start a simple experiment. Every night, before bed, write down 3 specific things you are grateful for today. But here's the secret. They can't be vague generalities like, I'm grateful for my family. It needs to be specific. I'm grateful because my son told me a silly joke that made me laugh in the middle of a stressful day. Or, I'm grateful because that breakfast was especially good and I really paid attention to it. What this practice does is train your brain to actively seek out what is working, what is present, what deserves appreciation. And make no mistake, this isn't superficial positive thinking. This profound realism. You're not inventing good things. You're finally noticing those things that your mind, preoccupied with worries, was automatically filtering out. Over time, this shift in presence completely transforms your emotional foundation. You build confidence not from a fantasy of future perfection, but from the honest recognition of your current resources. Are you healthy enough to walk? That's something. Do you have access to knowledge through books or the internet? That's immense. Are there people who care about you, even if the relationship is imperfect? That counts. Impermanence becomes a teacher of gratitude. When you understand that nothing lasts forever, each moment of tranquility, each small victory, each genuine laugh gains special weight. And from this stable foundation, built on the recognition of what is real and present, any action towards your goals becomes more sustainable and less desperate. 7. Value effort over results. Here's a liberating truth that goes against almost everything our culture preaches. You don't have control over the results, but you have total control over your effort. And yet, we spend our entire lives measuring our worth by outcomes, by visible successes, by external approval, all things that, ironically, are only partially under our control. This inversion of focus is a perfect recipe for chronic insecurity. When you tie your self-esteem to the outcome of a presentation, the success of a project, the reaction of a person, you are voluntarily surrendering your emotional stability to external factors over which you have limited influence. Epictetus was radical on this point. He said that the only true good is virtue, your actions, your intentions, your character, because it is the only thing that no one can take away from you. The rest? Preferable indifferences. Good to have, but not essential for your inner peace. When you shift your focus to effort, something profound changes in your relationship with challenges. Let's say you're working on an important project. The results-focused approach says, I need this to be a success or I'm a failure. This perspective leaves you tense, anxious, prone to overthinking, because there are so many variables outside your control. The boss's opinion, market circumstances, the luck of timing. The effort-focused approach says, I'm going to dedicate my best work to this. I'm going to use all the tools I have. I'm going to be present at every stage. Now you have a success metric that is 100% under your control. Did you give your best? Then you've already won regardless of the outcome. This is not illusion or self-deception. It's strategic wisdom. It's choosing to build your confidence on territory you truly control. The gratitude that arises from this change in perspective is immense because, for the first time, you feel competent regardless of external validation. Every day you dedicate yourself, every small effort you make, every moment of presence and attention you bring to your work already counts as a victory. The results? They become interesting bonuses, but no longer your emotional lifeline. Marcus Aurelius led battles knowing that even the emperor does not control the final outcome of wars. He only controlled his strategy, his courage, his effort. And that is what he based his dignity on. Start today. At the end of the day, don't ask, what did I accomplish? But rather, what was the quality of my effort today? Did you dedicate yourself? Were you present? Did you do the best you could with the resources available? If so, sleep peacefully. The impermanence of results, good today, bad tomorrow, then good again, loses its power to destabilize you when you understand that your value lies in the process, in consistent action, in the honest effort that only you can truly judge. 8. Train your tolerance to discomfort. One of the reasons why overthinking and insecurity dominate so many minds is simple. We become terribly fragile in the face of any uncomfortable sensation. Anxiety arises. We need to eliminate it immediately. Uncertainty appears. We try to resolve it by thinking compulsively. Fear manifests. We avoid the situation completely. This constant search for total comfort, paradoxically, makes us more insecure, because the message we send to our brain is clear. You can't handle difficult sensations. And when you believe that, every little discomfort becomes an existential threat. The Stoics had a radically different approach. They deliberately practiced controlled discomfort. Seneca occasionally slept on the hard floor, not out of masochism, but to train his mind to understand that discomfort is tolerable, that it doesn't break you, that you are stronger than you imagine. This practice of voluntarily exposing yourself to discomfort is one of the most powerful tools for building inner security. Start small. Take a cold shower for the last 30 seconds, even if you hate it. Go for a walk in the light rain instead of canceling. Have that difficult conversation you've been putting off. Every time you voluntarily choose to enter into minor discomfort and survive and realize it wasn't so terrible, you expand your confidence zone. It's not about suffering for the sake of suffering. It's about training your mind not to automatically run away from everything unpleasant. It's about building concrete evidence, through action and effort, that you are capable of enduring more than your catastrophic imagination leads you to believe. When you practice this consistently, something remarkable happens. Situations that previously provoked intense overthinking begin to lose their power. You think, I've been through uncomfortable things before and survived. This is just uncomfortable, not fatal. The gratitude that arises from this practice is unexpected but profound. You stop seeing yourself as a fragile person who needs perfect conditions to function and begin to recognize yourself as someone resilient, capable, adaptable. Presence in difficult moments becomes more accessible because you are no longer fighting against the experience itself. You are simply going through it, observing it, learning from it. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind that is free from passion is a citadel. He wasn't saying not to feel, but not to be dominated by sensations. Each small voluntary discomfort you practice builds another stone in that inner citadel. And here's the interesting trick. The more you practice discomfort tolerance, the less overthinking you experience. Why? Because most overthinking is a desperate attempt to avoid uncomfortable sensations. When you stop being so afraid of discomfort, you stop needing to compulsively think about how to avoid it. Wisdom lies in understanding that impermanence also applies to bad feelings. They come, reach a peak, and then naturally diminish if you simply allow them to exist without amplifying them with resistance. 9. Reflecting on the brevity of life. There's an exercise the Stoics practiced regularly that might seem morbid at first glance, but it carries profound wisdom, meditating on one's own mortality, not in a depressive or nihilistic way, but as a tool for perspective and presence. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself, "You could leave this life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." When you truly internalize the brevity of existence, not as an abstract concept, but as a tangible reality, something drastically changes in your priorities. That worry about what someone thought of your outfit, suddenly it seems absurdly small. That overthinking about a criticism you received 3 days ago completely loses its power. Awareness of transience doesn't depress you. It frees you from the mental prisons you've built for yourself. Think about it. You optimistically have perhaps 80 or 90 years left on this planet if all goes well. How many have already passed? How many are truly left? And of those that remain, how many will you waste ruminating on impossible scenarios, reliving past conversations, worrying about the judgments of others that probably never even happened? The impermanence of everything, including yourself, should be the greatest teacher of presence that exists. Every moment you have with the people you love is literally unrecoverable once it passes. Every opportunity to do something meaningful has a limited window. This awareness should not paralyze you. It should motivate genuine action and deep appreciation. Seneca wrote that it is not that we have little time, it is that we waste too much. And the greatest waste of all is spending your attention, your most precious and limited resource, on worries that won't matter at all a year from now, let alone a decade from now. Practice this exercise regularly. Before getting caught in a spiral of overthinking, pause and ask yourself, will this matter in 5 years? And on my deathbed, will I regret having given so much mental energy to this? The answer, in the vast majority of cases, will be no. And that answer brings you back to the only thing that truly matters, the present moment and what you choose to do with it. Gratitude becomes almost automatic when you remember that being alive, conscious, able to experience this exact moment, is a temporary privilege that millions have already lost and millions have yet to gain. This perspective doesn't magically solve all problems or eliminate all insecurity, but it places both in such a broad context that they lose their ability to dominate you. The effort you put into living well, cultivating wisdom, acting virtuously, being present for those you love, that's the only effort that truly counts when you adopt this expanded vision. Everything else? Temporary noise in an existence too brief to be wasted on fear. 10. Seek external support and wisdom. Insecurity intensifies dramatically in mental isolation. When you're trapped in your own head, without external perspectives, without counterpoints, without mirrors reflecting different versions of the reality you've constructed. Overthinking thrives on this isolation because, alone, your mind can create increasingly distorted narratives without any checkpoint of reality. It's like an echo chamber where only your own ideas reverberate, amplifying themselves until they seem like absolute truths. The Stoics, despite deeply valuing self-sufficiency, never advocated intellectual isolation. Marcus Aurelius had his philosophy teachers. Seneca corresponded with friends and students. Epictetus taught in community. They understood that wisdom is also built through dialogue, exchange, and the humility to recognize that you don't have all the answers and that other perspectives can illuminate blind spots you didn't even know existed. Seeking support is not a sign of weakness. It's a demonstration of emotional intelligence and self-awareness. It could be an honest conversation with a trusted friend who knows you well and isn't afraid to be sincere. It could be a therapist or mentor who brings professional expertise to help you navigate destructive mental patterns. It could be books, and here's a valuable suggestion. Read Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, Seneca's Letters to Lucilius, or Epictetus' Manual. These aren't abstract readings. They're practical tools written by people who faced immense challenges and found wisdom in the process. It could even be online communities of people navigating similar issues. The point is to break out of your own mental bubble, bring in fresh oxygen of thought, allow other voices, wiser, more experienced, or simply different, to expand the limited field of your current perception. What happens when you do this is a dramatic reduction in insecurity because you realize you're not alone in your struggles, that others have been through this and found solutions, that there are tools and strategies tested over centuries. The gratitude that arises is twofold. First, for the generosity of others in sharing their journeys and learnings. Second, for the relief of discovering that you don't need to reinvent the wheel or carry everything alone. Presence becomes more accessible when you have a support system, whether it's real people or ancestral wisdom in books, because you know you can turn to these resources when the burden becomes too heavy. The effort here is simple but crucial. Be humble enough to ask for help, curious enough to seek knowledge, open enough to consider that perhaps your current perspective is not the only or the most useful one. The impermanence of your certainties, understanding that what you believe today can and should evolve with new information, is liberating. You don't need to have all the answers right now. You just need the awareness to recognize when you need support and the courage to actively seek it. So, after everything we've explored, one question remains that only you can answer. For how much longer will you allow insecurity and overthinking to steal your energy, your presence, your peace? How many important conversations will you miss? How many opportunities will you ignore? How many precious moments will you lose while trapped inside your own head, rehearsing scenarios that will probably never happen? The truth is that no content, no philosophy, no technique works without your conscious action. The Stoics didn't write these wisdoms to look pretty on shelves. They lived them, tested them, refined them in the real fire of existence. And now you have access to this condensed knowledge, to these practical tools that have endured for centuries precisely because they work. But they only work if you stop merely consuming information and start implementing transformation. Which of the 10 principles resonated most deeply with you? That's your starting point. Don't try to change everything at once. Gratitude lies in the gradual process, in consistent effort, not in the instant transformation your anxious mind so desperately craves. Choose a practice. Perhaps it's creating that daily worry time, or starting a 3 gratitude journal before bed, or practicing small voluntary discomforts, or simply bringing your attention back to the present each time you notice your mind wandering. Make this a non-negotiable commitment for the next 30 days. And observe, with genuine curiosity and without excessive judgment, what changes. You will realize that impermanence works in your favor. Each day of practice accumulates. Each small effort builds the inner citadel that Marcus Aurelius so valued. And suddenly, perhaps without even realizing exactly when it happened, you will notice that that paralyzing insecurity has lost its power, that overthinking no longer dominates you as before, that a space of peace and confidence is growing within you. The final wisdom the Stoics left us is this: you have more control than you imagine. Not over the external world, not over other people, not over the final results, but over yourself, your responses, your mind, your actions. And when you take that control, when you stop wasting energy trying to manage the uncontrollable and focus on what is truly in your hands, life changes. Not magically, not instantly, but truly and profoundly. If this content ignited something in you, if any of these ideas clicked in your mind, don't let that spark go out. Subscribe to the channel and activate notifications to continue this journey of presence, wisdom, and genuine transformation. Because in the end, no one can do this work for you, but you don't have to do it alone either. We are here, exploring these fundamental questions together, learning from those who have walked this path before us, building more conscious, more confident, more meaningful lives. Now, the only question that remains is, are you ready to begin?